They're going to take their cues from Joe Rogan if they've listened to Joe Rogan for the last 12 months for 4 hours a day when he finally starts to talk about politics in September or October. They're not going to do it because they saw some ad by the Democratic Party in October.
And that's why you actually hit the nail on the head as to why Rogan has really gotten under my skin and I've really been going after him, is because he did a bait and switch.
Kyle Kulinski was a guest on Bryan Tyler Cohen's show to talk about how much better the Republican Party is than the Democratic Party with messaging and how upset Kyle Kulinski is for Joe Rogan's heel turn to Maga. We're going to take a look at these clips of Kyle Kulinski and Bryan Tyler Cohen. I'm going to chime in with my thoughts on this too. This is an interesting one. Let's check it out together.
He was, for a very long time, left-coded, and he would talk about left-wing issues. And then over time, he ended up flipping and endorsing Trump. And he knows that Trump massively cut taxes for the wealthy and corporations. He knows that we lost 200,000 manufacturing jobs under Trump. He knows that Trump presided over a net loss of 2.9 million jobs. He knows that 2.3 million people lost health insurance under him. He knows he appointed more Wall Street CEOs and billionaires than any president in history. He knows he filled the NLRB with union busters. He knows that his labor department stiffed 8 million workers of overtime pay. And I think that's what frustrates me, is exactly what you described, which is he was a cultural podcaster first, and just like your everyman first. But then effectively, he basically sane washed the right and made it seem like, oh, they're the down to earth ones. They're the ones who are more realistic and more like you and understand you. And I think people are in for a really, really rude awakening about that when they realize your wages aren't going up, you're not getting better health care, more jobs are going to be outsourced, and it's going to be more tax cuts for the rich, and it's going to be a disaster.
Well, what would you attribute that to? Because, would you say it's because these guys are just wealthy and Republicans are just better for wealthy people? And, of course, they have to use culture wars as a distraction so that people don't pay attention to their economic agenda? Or B, do you think that he was actually... Do you think that he was a perpetrator or a victim of this whole distraction campaign where Republicans made the entire election basically a referendum on a talking point that didn't exist in practice? This idea that Kamala Harris's agenda was gender reassignment surgeries among trans inmates in prison, something that came about in 2019 and that she's disavowed since then. And so do you think that for him, this is something, again, do you think that he is somebody who knew about this and was like, okay, I want a better economic agenda, so I'm going to keep pushing this along with the other people at the top of the Republican Party who know better, but fuck it, we'll just keep pushing it anyway? Or do you think that he was actually a victim of this disinformation campaign himself, and he's like, oh, I keep hearing about trans inmates in prison, and so this must be the thing that everybody's talking about in politics. This must be what this election is a referendum on.
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, I think his friend group, he's surrounded by edgy right-wing comedians who think just offending people is comedy, basically. And you mix that with their weird obsession with free speech, where they built this idea in their mind that it's only censorious college lefties who crack down on free speech. Not like Trump or anything is super censorious and authoritarian. Never that, of course. Right. But you immerse yourself in that world. You're surrounded by right-wing voices all the time. And then, he's mega wealthy, and he's surrounded by UFC fighters who are pro-Trump, surrounded by wealthy business people who are pro-Trump, celebrities who are pro-Trump. He sort of cocooned himself in this right-wing echo chamber. And then I think eventually over time it became he's more the perpetrator than the victim. But he started out as a victim. And then now it's very clear he's just thrown his lot in with MAGA. And the same way he has his conservative comedian friend group and they all look out for each other. Now I think that tent has broadened to now I also look out for J.D. Vance and Donald Trump and Republican politicians. But at the end of the day, however he got there, it's almost irrelevant to me because he's become a massive purveyor of misinformation and disinformation and the dumbest ideas I've ever heard. And he's dragging young, impressionable men down a path to support a politics that's going to lower their wages, give them worse health care, lead to more jobs being outsourced, destroy the regulatory state completely, lead to more wars. And that's why I've been on that war path lately. I mean, I'm sure you know, but one of the biggest things that I talk about all the time is it drove me crazy that there was this perception among MAGA that Trump is anti-war.
Yeah.
That's never been true. It's never been close to true.
I'm going to stop here for just a second before Kyle Kulinski gets into more of this. I think also with Joe Rogan is he's a guy who has always been kind of sucked in by conspiracy theories. You know, that's been long been the thing with his show before he got really political. And if he's talking about UFOs or it's Bigfoot or whatever, you know, that doesn't really hurt anyone. But when you switch over and it's vaccines and trans athletes and all of that, there were a whole lot of people that the pandemic broke their brains. And Joe Rogan is one of these people. You know, I think a lot about, I don't know how many people would be familiar with this, but there used to be a guy on the radio, he died several years back, named Art Bell, who did a show called Coast to Coast AM that was on the radio late at night. And it would be all these people calling in about how they saw ghosts or Bigfoot or demons or whatever. So all these just nutty conspiracy theory people. And I have my own little theory that I firmly believe that a lot of those people went away from just believing in ghosts and Bigfoot and aliens to believing all these MAGA conspiracies, which are actually harmful. And I think that happened to Joe Rogan. I think he really, COVID broke his brain, and he's a guy that, you know, he's just a comedian. And there have been many times on his show that he's caught not having done any research on the topic that he's talking about. He'll throw out something as if it's a fact, and then his producer or whoever on the show will say, well, actually, you know, we looked this up and you're wrong about this. So he's, you know, I don't want to say that Joe Rogan is dumb, but he's also not a genius. And I think he, again, is somebody who has been into conspiracy theories in the past. And all of MAGA now is just one big conspiracy theory. Everything to them is a conspiracy.
He's gone around this entire campaign. He was going around talking about war with Mexico and war with Iran. He told Israel to strike Iran's nuclear facilities. Like, at some point, the information, the facts have to actually matter. His first term has to matter. The stuff he's saying on the campaign trail has to matter. But MAGA got it in their head that, no, somehow he's anti-war and Kamala Harris is the war hawk because Liz Cheney endorsed her. And it just drives me crazy, man.
Well, the crazy part about that, I spoke to Cenk a few weeks ago, and he basically said, I asked him, I was like, what's your red line where you're going to stop giving basically the MAGA universe the benefit of the doubt? This idea that, okay, they are supportive of him because of like policy, as opposed to what I think it is just because he says jump, they say how high. All of the principles are malleable, and whatever he wants them, like, it can, whatever way the wind blows, you know, he'll change, and then all these people will go along with him. He said that exact thing. He said that they are anti-war, and that's my red line, and I'll stop giving them the benefit of the doubt once we see Trump engage in some hawkish behavior, and they don't abandon him. He hasn't even taken office yet. And right now, he's been threatening war with, like, Denmark to be able to annex Greenland, threatening war with Panama, and, like, expressly came out and said, this isn't, you know, we're going to keep all options on the table, military and economic. And so, like, this idea, even before he's in office, he's already undermining the very thing that all of these Republicans are putting themselves out on a limb for, which is this idea, again, to your exact point, that he's the guy that's going to keep us out of war. He's going to be the pro-peace candidate. He's going to be the one to keep all of the money inside the United States and not worry about foreign wars. And, like, what do you think that Mexico, Canada, Greenland, Denmark, Panama are all just going to roll over and say, yeah, go ahead, annex our territory?
And that's the thing. You're hitting the nail on the head. They already failed the test, Cenk.
Right,
they already So forget everything you said, which was very recent stuff he's saying, et cetera, which I totally agree with. Yeah. But in the first term, Trump increased drone strikes over 400%. He kept us in Iraq. He kept us in Afghanistan. There was a massive increase, 330% increase in civilian deaths in Afghanistan under Trump. He bombed Syria twice. He bombed Somalia. He said we're occupying a third of Syria to, quote, take the oil. He increased the Pentagon budget every single year. He tried to do a coup against Venezuela. He ripped up the Iran agreement. I mean, I can go on here, but but the point is, so if being anti-war, if he crosses that line, we'll abandon him. Well, then you should have abandoned him in 2016, 2017.
That ship has sailed already.
And Bryan Tyler Cohen is right with what he's saying. I think it really just comes down to, with MAGA, it's just going to be whatever Trump says goes. And we know he can say one thing one day and say completely the opposite of the next day, and there's no consequences of that. And all the MAGA people are going to fall in line. Like Brian Tyler Cohen and Kyle Kulinski are saying here, the idea that Trump is anti-war or the Republican Party and MAGA are anti-war is laughable. They're anti-funding Ukraine. That's it. If Donald Trump, on January 21st announces an invasion of Iran, they're all going to go along with it and say, of course we had to invade Iran. They're not going to be upset about that because the dear leader decided to do it, so they're going to go along with whatever. He could be at war with half of the world, and MAGA is going to support that because, like Brian Tyler Cohen says, they're just going to go along with whatever the dear leader says. And Cenk, he keeps saying over and over again that they're anti-war, and he is completely wrong on that, in my opinion. I just don't see any evidence of this at all. But let me know what you think. Do you think, is MAGA anti-war? Do you actually believe this? If Trump would start some kind of a new war, increase drone strikes, or any number of other things, do you think that MAGA is going to be upset about that? Let me know in the comments about that. Also, let me know your thoughts about Joe Rogan and why he has made this shift to the right and over to MAGA. Also, make sure to give me a like and subscribe. I just passed 50,000 subscribers, so thanks very much to all the subscribers out there. I want to keep growing up to 100,000 and beyond. This is Chris on Culture. I'll see you in the next one.